my thoughts with you.
Thank you, sir. That is very nice. I request Mr. Arun Bhagat to kindly talk about the Central Armed Police Forces. Mr. Bhagat, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it's a great honor as well as a pleasure to be here with you. Such distinguished members of our club, and indeed this session, I hope, will be productive in many ways. To start with, I would like to go back half a century back, 50 years, the night of 8th and 9th April 1965. A small post consisting of 3 sheds in the Rann of Kutch on a bait, a mound as they call it. It was a dark night, a moonless night. The air was totally still, and this CRPF unit, Central Reserve Police Force unit, had just been posted there because of recent intrusions into the area by Pakistani Rangers. Rann of Kutch area was not demarcated, though there was plenty of evidence in the agreement which had been signed by the Bombay Presidency with the government of Sindh at that time. But in 1956, Indian forces had gone there, state forces rather, and consolidated the area, and there was no problem till the year 1965 January, when Pakistani intrusion started. The SRP, which is the State Reserve Police, Armed Police of the Gujarat state, they were manning the border as the Rajasthan Armed Constabulary was manning the Rajasthan-Pakistan border, and the PAP, the Punjab Armed Police. That was the practice at that point of time. There was no central force except the CRPF and the Assam Rifles in the northeast. All the other forces came into existence much later. So turning back to this post with hardly 20 people were on alert, and they saw that there was some movement at a distance from them. The head constable who was on duty, he alerted the staff, and everyone took up positions. And at 2 a.m., what they found was shelling with 25-pounders, mortar fire started, and an attack, full-fledged attack, was made by the 21st Punjab Regiment of the Pakistan Army. Pakistan had inducted 3 regiments there under a new brigade that they have formed, and they call this the Operation Desert Arrowhead. Surprised, shocked, with very basic minimum training, they still retaliated with the 1 MMG that they had and the 2 LMGs that they had, and some mortar fire they were able to return. And there were 3 waves of attacks, but Head Constable Bhavana Ram, Sub-Inspector Balbir Singh, they stood their ground. 6 constables and officers lost their lives, but they stood steadfast. After dawn, the Pakistan started retreating, and by the afternoon, Indian reinforcements came in. This was the Sardar Post incident, which set off a chain of reactions, which ended in Operation Gibraltar, which was the attack of infiltration into Kashmir, followed by Operation Grand Slam, a British term which was used. And interestingly, the Major General who was in charge of the Gujarat operations on the Pakistan side was none other than the infamous Tikka Khan, who was to appear again and again. So the CRPF has been able to face up to such incidents and work all over the country. In 1959 also, they were involved in a skirmish with the Chinese in the hot springs of Ladakh. The biggest civil armed central force with about 280,000 personnel. They have got a rapid action force also, which was specially designed and specially organized for communal warfare. Any task, anywhere, anytime. This is the ethos of the BSF, the Border Security Force, which is the second largest force. And its motto, so truly, is duty unto death. The Border Security Force was formed after the 1965 war, which I had referred to earlier. They are responsible for guarding the Pakistan and the Bangladesh border. India, as you know, has a land border of over 15,000 kilometers. And the longest border is, interestingly, with Bangladesh, followed by China and then by Pakistan. So the border protection has been divided into different forces who develop the necessary skills for that particular area and climate. We have the BSF, which is also very innovative. It has a dog training school, it has a horse breeding and training school, and as well as manufactures tear gas for the whole of the country as well as for export. The BSF was of course formed by the great visionary who was also a member of our club, Mr. Rustomji, K.F. Rustomji, and he was ably assisted by Mr. Ashwini Kumar and Mr. Bhatnagar, who is still a member of this, who are still a member of this club. Next, I will tell you about the CISF. The CISF, or the Central Industrial Security Force, was also formed to protect our PSUs, our public sector units. They run a consultancy service also, in which multinational as well as Indian international companies, they take their assistance in organizing security. They also have specialized wings for chemical, biological and nuclear disasters. So it's a very comprehensive force which has been developed, which has been built up. It also looks after the fire brigade requirements of installations, and it guards all our space and nuclear establishments. Then of course we have the NSG, about whom you must have heard quite a lot, and Mr. Marwa was the one under whose direction and whose control we had Black Thunder 1 and Black Thunder 2. Perhaps some other day he can come and tell all of you about it. Assam Rifles, who are called the Sentinels of the Northeast, is perhaps the oldest paramilitary organization, having been established in 1835 and having been named at that point of time the Kachar Levy. They have 46 battalions and concentrate on the problem areas which exist or problems which arise in the Northeast, and slowly they have been given the responsibility of guarding the Myanmar Indian border, which, as you know, also sees a lot of infiltration. The Sashastra Seema Bal also is an organization which has come up recently with the purpose of guarding the Bhutan and the Nepal borders. This organization also specializes in disaster management. They have a number of companies who were very usefully used in the recent earthquakes in Nepal as well as in parts of India. The life, as Mr. Marwa has already said, of the constables and the personnel, the NGOs and the officers is very hard. They have to live away from their families all the time under great stress and strain. And in general elections, they have to move from one state to another, one district to another. So much so that the CRPF, they call themselves Chalte Raho Pyare Force. Now this is a body of men and women now, because lots of women officers as well as other ranks have been inducted, particularly in the CISF, in the BSF as well, in the CRP, to be able to cater to the new needs which have arisen. They are always there for the help of the states, apart from protecting the borders. And whenever there's a turmoil, there's a communal unrest. Recently, the Gujar agitation, you must have heard only the other day that some battalions or some companies of the BSF were deployed. So they are a second line of defense for the country on the borders, as well as they are a big support to the states for maintenance of peace and law and order. All of these organizations have their headquarters in Delhi, except the Assam Rifles, and they are doing a great service to the country. I think I'll end now, because my throat is also very hoarse. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I'll request Mr. K.K. Mitra to kindly tell us about the intelligence sides of the police organizations. Mr. Mitra, sir. Thank you.
Now, before we talk about intelligence agencies, I'd briefly like to remind ourselves about our national security objectives. Until the end of the Cold War era, national security was mainly understood in terms of a nation's territorial integrity. The primary threat to the security of a state, sovereign state, came from other states. Without doubt, that threat is still valid, and the agencies are to do everything they can to counter this threat. But side by side with this military threat, there is a new security paradigm which is valid in 21st century. These traditional state-centric military threats are often overshadowed by new asymmetric threats from non-state actors who engage in mindless acts of violence against innocent citizens and their property. They engage in mass casualty terrorism, and central as well as state intelligence agencies are required today to collect intelligence and prevent catastrophic mass casualty attacks by organized groups who receive support from outside the country, from hostile foreign agencies. The country, indeed, you can say that all our major threats to national security, like jihadi terrorism, like insurgency, separatist movement, and left-wing extremism, they are all keeping our intelligence agencies busy, and they have succeeded in blurring the traditional distinction between domestic and external intelligence. After every major terrorist attack, the agencies routinely face the flag, and people talk about revamping intelligence. The case is made out for allocation of greater resources, for even restructuring the national security management apparatus. But once the storm passes over, the policymakers, the media, and the people at large seem to forget all about it. As a result, intelligence operates on the fringe of government, unable to upgrade its resources, both human as well as technical. The agencies in our country work in a democratic atmosphere, in a free democratic setup, where hostile foreign agencies have a field day in operating, establishing bases, collecting weapons, raising funds, procuring weapons, and communicating with each other, as well as planning their insidious operations. The agencies often succeed, more often than not, in their attempts in foiling their objectives without making such success known in public. As President John Kennedy, while addressing the CIA officials, aptly remarked, the successes of the intelligence agencies are unheralded, but their failures are trumpeted. However, we must remember that even the basic intelligence system, the most advanced systems, once in a while, may fail to avoid big failures, which will be known to the world at large. It is somewhat like a game of cricket. Since India is a cricket lover's country, I will give the example which everybody will understand. Now, even Sachin Tendulkar can be bowled out by a little known bowler who has to be lucky and right only once. Whereas Sachin has to be lucky and right all the time. If he fails once, the fellow gets his wicket. So this probability, therefore, of occasional failure is large. And this is a big challenge the intelligence agencies face. Intelligence is of very little consequence unless the policymakers and the consumers act upon the intelligence promptly. This is one problem area. Things can often go wrong, and people blame the intelligence agencies for their failure. Being a silent service, the agencies cannot make a big public outcry, and they silently suffer. The counterintelligence operations of the agencies to neutralize threats from hostile foreign agencies and their traditional networks needs cooperation between the agencies, the police, the law enforcement agencies, and the administrative setup. At the end of the day, all we need is to have a mutually supportive working relationship between these organizations. And of course, the public support, so that we can discover and identify hostile groups, their leaders, and the common citizens who are very vulnerable to recruitment. A few words regarding the police. Mr. Bed Marwa Saab, Mr. Arun Bhagat Saab has already dealt with two different aspects of the police work. The police are the first responders to any major terrorist attack. They are the so-called foot soldiers who are supposed to help the agencies against hostile foreign agencies, but they are, as mentioned already, neglected and politically manipulated. In virtually every state of India, besides they are understaffed, overworked, under-equipped, and often very, very demoralized through constant criticism. India has the lowest police population ratio. It is 142 per 100,000 people, which is far lower by standard of other countries. The outdated Police Act of 1861 is still in force, though we have a very eminent committee who prepared a new Police Act which has not been yet seen the light of the day. The long-awaited police reforms, as Mr.